Okay, hey everybody, welcome back to BANKAST. I am your host, Teching101. I think we're on a clip now, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're going to be good. We got 2 episodes in the bag, pretty positive reception from both of them. Thanks to everybody for the comments last time, for the recommendations on some guests that you would like to see on BANKAST. I have yet to set anything up with that because I'm horrible at scheduling, but we will have guests on BANKAST at some point, and thanks to all for your recommendations. So yes, this will be Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War Arc, Episode 3 breakdown, March of the StarCross. Ooh. So, I will say, just as a preliminary thing, this is probably the first episode of the 1,000-Year Blood War Arc that deviates from the manga material probably the most significantly. The first 2 episodes, just to give you an idea, episode 1 was chapter 480 to 483, so that was about approximately 4 chapters of the manga, and then episode 2 was 484 to 488, about 5 chapters of the manga, approximately. I say approximately because there's a few scenes that get moved around to other locations. Some small scenes might get omitted and replaced with other things, but not like anything too major. Like there was that scene in like the second episode where Yuki's phone ringtone was like Shino's humming voice, or like her singing in the shower or something. So it's like they cut that out, like who really cares, right? So this is the first episode where they actually do remove at least 2 crucial scenes. Not crucial, but like 2 scenes that had a little bit more weight to it than Yuki's ringtone, you know what I mean? However, they do replace those scenes with something that I think is even more valuable, and that is scenes with Uryu and Ryukin, which, considering the fact that this final arc is all about Quincy's attacking the Soul Society, and Uryu is conspicuously absent for most of the early part of this arc, and Ryukin is absent for like the entirety of it up until like the very end. I'll tell you what, the most appearances Ryukin has in the final arc in the manga is in a flashback. The flashback that we get with Isshin and Masaki, he shows up a few times there. But in the actual present storyline of Bleach, he shows up at like the very end in like maybe 2 chapters, and that's it. So I think this episode actually has more screen time than with Ryukin than in the entirety of the manga with like in its completion, okay? So anyway, yeah, let's get right into it here. Bleach episode 3, and we'll go about it, and I'll tell you what they changed and where they changed it at. Okay, so we're starting off right where we left off. This is, I think his name is pronounced Kilhei Opie. Not Kurhei, but Kilhei, which is kind of appropriate given his attitude. So he just finished wiping out the 3 Beastia. That's Mila Rose, Sung Sung, and Apache. Haribel's 3 Fractione, and they were stated as like the 3 Beastia by Nell, and Nell was like, oh, they're really powerful, Ichigo. You know, they're about on the level of the devil. You know, you don't have any hopes of like, if they're the ones fighting, then we're okay. And Ichigo arrives on this scene, and they are all defeated. And by the way, I love the scene here with Nell riding on Ichigo's shoulders, and then Kilhei just kind of looks up and is just like, oh, you have an Arrancar on your shoulder. And Nell just kind of like, yeah, I'm just gonna hide back here, please. You're scary. And then Ichigo just kind of looks over and just like, it's okay, Nell. I got this. I'll protect you. So that's a nice little scene. So Kilhei immediately realizes who Ichigo is. And why is this? Well, he mentions that there's a thing called the Daten. And the Daten is essentially like the Quincy, like, billboard network. It's like Quincy social media. It's Quincy Twitter, okay? And it's essentially like a collection of information that Yuha has gathered over the centuries, and he made it, you know, available for all of the Sternritter in order to read. All of his officers can read this Daten, which basically supplies them with information on, like, the Gote 13 and the lieutenants and their Bankais, and it also includes a thing called the 5 war potentials. The 5 war potentials are 5 enemy soldiers that are working against the, you know, so basically 5 Shinigami that, you know, their abilities are either so strong that they will actually, you know, pose a problem to the Sternritter's invasion, or their abilities or personalities might be so hard to read that it's impossible to really understand what they're going to do. Like they're basically X factors, so to speak, involving the war that are so so unpredictable, you don't know. Like, the battle could literally be swayed either way because of these 5 war potentials, and he mentions that Ichigo is one of these such war potentials, or a special threat. Now, this should not really come as a surprise to anybody. Ichigo has all these abilities, you know, he's Hollow Powers, Shinigami powers, Fullbring powers now. He's got a really powerful Bankai, he's a substitute Shinigami, he's sort of like the being that has everything, and it's like we don't really understand him yet. Also might have something to do with the fact that Ebern could not steal his Bankai in the first episode. Maybe that'll come back to something eventually at some point. So, yeah, Killhei mentions, yeah, you're a special war potential. I was very surprised that you're here, but I know who you are, right? At this point, we have all of the regular foot soldiers of the hunting squad showing up to fight against Ichigo, and they bust out their arrows, and Ichigo's just kind of like, special threat? What's that? I don't even know. He mentions that the Quincy's here are using a technique called the Hierenkyaku, which is the high-speed movement technique that all Quincy's utilize. This is what Uryu utilizes. We even see flashbacks here. I believe this is actually taken during Uryu's fight against Ukiura. And, oh, by the way, little bit of a side note. So, all of the flashback sequences are obviously taken from the first anime. They didn't, like, reanimate the flashback sequences. But they add this filter over it, and it's the same filter that is utilized during the opening credits with that, you know, the pink in the background. And somebody actually mentioned to me the color that they selected for this, like, hot pink, is not actually pink. The real name of the color is, like, something strawberry, like bright, vibrant strawberry. And the whole point of that is it's Ichigo's name means strawberry in Japanese, or it can be read as strawberry. So that's actually kind of a clever thing where they take the old footage from the anime, and in order to disguise the fact that, obviously, if you, like, look at the fight here between Uryu and Ukiura in the first anime, and then the animation now, it's going to be very jarring. So there's a few ways that you can get around that. You can add, like, a little filter over it, like static or whatever, add, like, a focused filter, add it, like, make it dimmer, or make it look like, you know, old video quality. They decided to change up the color scheme and add this, this strawberry pinkish hue to everything, and it's also in the intro. And so I really like that. Like, there was, like, a care put into it. Like, they selected this color specifically because it's like something strawberry, and therefore Ichigo's name. So that's the reference to that. So Ichigo knows that they're using Hierenkyaku, and he figures out at this point, like, wait a second, you can almost have, like, the gears spinning in Ichigo's head, like, wait a second, holy crap, they're Quincy's! And it's funny because Killhei kind of even brings up here, he's like, do you really honestly telling me that you went to fight us and you didn't even know who we were? It's pretty damn obvious, I have to say. I think the second that Ebern showed up dressed like he did and pulling out the giant arrow, Ichigo should have figured out immediately, like, wait a second, they're Quincy's! This was something that was also brought up in the captain meeting in the last episode. Like, Mayuri has this really dramatic moment where he's standing in front of all of the captains. And to be fair, Mayuri does say, like, okay, I'm sure most of the captains probably figured this out already, but the enemy are actually Quincy's. And it's like, yeah, it's this interesting thing. I don't know if, like, Kubo wanted this to be a little bit more of, like, a mystery at the beginning of this arc. Like, who is the enemy? Who is attacking the Gote 13 and the Seirete? What's going on here? And then, like, the big reveal was, like, they're Quincy's. But, like, everybody should have figured out immediately, like, as soon as Ebern showed up, like, yeah, they're Quincy's. They're very obviously Quincy's. But Ichigo finally connects the dots here, and he's like, okay, they're 100% Quincy's. You could also argue maybe Ichigo did not want to believe that they were Quincy's because, like, Uryu's a Quincy, and so the implication of, like, what that would mean. So I guess that's fair. Anyway, so, you know, Killhei is basically like, yep, that's true. Yeah, I'll answer your question. We have a Quincy pentacle showing up on his belt, which he then turns into a sword. It was mentioned before that Quincy's only use bows and arrows. Kubo kind of throws that out of the window in this arc because he basically just wanted to draw a bunch of really cool designed weapons for the Quincy's. They are all still technically projectile weapons, though. So even though Killhei's using a sword, like a saber, it actually is like a projectile, so it actually turns into a bow. So, like, every single Quincy weapon, like, I'll even, like I've already spoiled so much in the arc already, like, that's kind of the premise of this, so I'll say it once again, like, spoilers for the future of the arc. But eventually we get to meet a Stern Ritter named BG9, who's basically, like, a robot or a cyborg. We're not even really sure about BG9, but BG9's weapon is literally a minigun. He uses a Quincy minigun. So it's, like, really cool. Robert Akutron uses, like, dual pistols. Basby has a crossbow, you know. So some of the Quincy's do tend to use like standard projectile, like bows and crossbows, long bows, short bows, that kind of thing. But then we have these unique weapons where Kurhei pulls out, or I'm gonna switch back and forth because I'm so used to calling him Kurhei. Pulls out a saber, and the saber is also a bow in a certain capacity. And so he uses this against Ichigo here. We are Quincy's. By the way, I love Kurhei's voice, Killhei's voice. I mean, it's very pompous. It's very much like, so it's kind of like how Eburn was trying to act in the first episode, where Eburn was just like, hello there, Ichigo Kurosaki, I'm Eburn. And then he's trying to act so cool, but he clearly isn't, and Ichigo just kicks him in the face. You know, Killhei sort of has the power to back it up. He's a Stern Ritter. He's Stern Ritter J, the jail. He's got a power. He's got a script given to him by His Majesty, given to him by Yuha. He's pretty powerful. He's the hunting squad captain. He's wiped out all of these really strong Arankars up until this point. So when he does it, he's actually, you know, kind of, his pompousness actually does have a little bit of, you know, credulity to back it, okay? So we cut back to the captain meeting. Now, in the manga, this is where a little bit of a change takes place here. So the captain meeting is occurring. Basically, Yamamoto continues his like line of questioning, like, you know, you're telling me all this stuff about their Quincy's. Like, I don't really care who they are or what their goal is. Where is their base of operations? You got to understand that Yamamoto at this point is out for blood. He wants to annihilate the enemy army. He doesn't care who they are, because they wiped out, they killed his like most loyal friend Chojiro Sasakibe, the lieutenant of Squad 1. So he is out for blood right now. Mayuri states that unfortunately we've yet to find it. Yamamoto says, okay, you know what? You know, bam, bam, you know, stamps his staff on the floor. You know, I am ordering all squad captains to prepare for war. We're entering like wartime, you know, preparations. And I love that Yamamoto does bring this up here. He says, you know, okay, they said they were going to invade in 5 days, but like they're the enemy. So we have no idea if they already did this sneaky attack at the beginning when they killed Chojiro. So there is no reason to expect that they're going to go by their word and wait 5 days. So we should be ready like as soon as possible. So I really like that Yamamoto did that. We see a shot of the few captains here in the meeting. We see Uketake there. We see Kensei Muguruma. Yamamoto, you know, I can't wait until, I think the English dub of this is coming out on November 4th. By the way, I think the original Japanese voice actor of Yamamoto passed away several years ago, so this is a new voice actor for Yamamoto. At least I believe that his voice actor passed away. The English VA, I kind of really want to, you know, hear his voice again if they can get the same English VA for Yamamoto, provided he's not dead. I don't think he is. Because Yamamoto, throughout most of this story, has just been a very... I mean, he's had moments of anger, absolutely, but for the most part, he's been a very calm, stoic kind of leader of like, okay, Gotei 13, we gather together now for the first annual Gotei 13 Seirei ice cream party. You will all have fun with your ice creams. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of like that, but when he gets pissed, he gets pissed. And so I kind of really want to like hear his English voice, you know, because that's what I grew up with. That's what I ended up watching, you know, the anime like on Toonami way back in like 2007. And I want to hear him like with this power, this like kind of like rage in his tone of like, we are going to like annihilate this army. You know what I mean? This is a shot from the opening I included just because I missed it last time. There was a single shot in the opening that did include the Squad Zero, so I apologize for not showing this last time. We have the 5 Squad Zero members. We have on the bottom right, we have Nimaya, who is the creator of the Zanpakuto, the sword god. To his right, we have... Kiryu Hikefune, who is the previous captain of Squad 12 before Uehara. So it went Hikefune and then Uehara and then Mayuri. And that's actually her in her slimmed down form because she has another form that she has, but we'll see that when we get to her. On the very top of the staircase, we have Ichibe Hyosube, who is like the first Shinigami like ever created kind of situation. He has like the strongest Bankai and everything like that. We'll find out more about him. He's the eyeball monk, the monk of names. A lot of interesting stuff with him. And then after his left, we have Sentomaru. Sentomaru is the garment queen, I guess. She's the one that creates a bunch of these like different garments for the Shinigami. She has like a bunch, like thousands of hands that she uses to fight with. Pretty cool. And then we have Korinji, who at the bottom on the left, who uses a paddle as a weapon, but he's the general of the East, and he has a Zanpakuto. His Zanpakuto was the only Zanpakuto, well, no, him and Ichibe's were the only Zanpakutos of the Zero Squad that we actually saw released. We saw Ichibe's Shikai and Bankai, although they aren't actually called Shikai and Bankai because Ichibe had like the first Zanpakuto ever. And then we also had Korinji, who also, his Zanpakuto was named Kin Pika. which is like I think the release command for that was Gleam, like like it's like a light-based Zanpakuto. So we did not get to see Sentomaru's, we did not get to see Kiryu Hikefune's, and Nimaya used a Zanpakuto against Yuha later on, but I don't think because he's like the one that created the Zanpakuto, so like he has like a bunch, like pretty much every Zanpakuto is kind of his, you know what I mean? So we'll find out more about them as we go, but I just wanted to bring that up. So yeah, Bleach number 3, and then we have the logo right there, March of the StarCross. I love how they do that, by the way. I mentioned it last time, but I'm just really looking forward to how the different titles are going to appear in each episode moving on. All right, so let's see. Ichigo brings up the thing, like, I thought Quincy's only used bows and arrows. And then he just tosses Nell over to Orihime and Chad. They arrive on the scene. I was like, okay. And then Ichigo begins his fight. He throws a Getsuga Tensho at Kurhei. He just kind of walks out of the cloud, though, really kind of uninjured. And he just kind of like, his hat got knocked off. Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho knocked off his hat. So there you go, Ichigo. Kurhei mentions that, like, it makes me dismayed by my lack of skill. And this is where we get a very interesting line that is never really expanded upon in the manga. So we get a line here from Ichigo where he says, your arrows were, like, don't feel too bad. Your arrows were a lot stronger than Ishida's. To which Killhei is like, Ishida? Do you mean Uryu Ishida's Heilig Pafio? Which, by the way, I was so happy. So we finally get the pronunciation on how that's said, Heilig Pafio. That is pretty close to the way I always said it. So I'm like, oh, good, I got that one right. At least close enough that I think it's not that big of a difference. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, the Heilig Pafio is the official name for the arrows that the Quincy's fire, the holy arrows. So that's the thing. Or maybe it means holy bow. It either means holy bow or holy arrows, something like that. But, that's the official name for it, and it's Heilig Pafio. But the main point is, he mentions, wait a second, you're saying that Uryu Ishida's Heilig Pafio is weaker than mine. That's not possible. So it's a line of implication that the Sternritter are aware of the Ishida family. Not only are they aware of them, but Killhei here is saying the Ishida family should be way stronger than me. And Killhei, like I said, he's a little bit of a pompous kind of character here, where he's like, I am great! I am Sternritter J, the jail, Killhei Opie. I'm a Sternritter that was given a script by His Majesty, And he's actually having a moment of humility here, where he's saying that, like, oh, Ishida's arrows are stronger than mine? No, that's not right. His should be way more powerful than I am. So it's not something that's really expanded upon, like, the Ishidas should therefore be automatically stronger than all the other Sternritter. We get very little connection between the Ishida family and the Sternritters throughout the manga. We understand that Soken probably was a Sternritter at some point, but we don't really get to see him. We don't get to see Soken Ishida at all in this arc. Not in a flashback, not anywhere. So he's mentioned, but that's it. And it's like weird because you'd want him to be there. Like in the flashback with Yuha, you would want to see Soken there as, Uryu's grandfather or having something to do with the Vandenreich, you know what I mean? It's implied that he was a Sternritter and that he, worked for them for a while and then defected, but it's just never explained further than that. So this was one of the first setups for that in the entire arc, and I'm hoping they actually go somewhere with it now. So Ichigo asks, like, okay, what do you mean by that? And Kurhei has a great line here where he's like, speech is silver, but silence is golden. So, this guy's horrible, but, I like the way he talks and his kind of like mannerisms and stuff like that. It's interesting, if nothing else. So at this point, he's just like, okay. So this is something that is a change in the manga. So at this point, we're on chapter 489 at this point. And there is a moment where we actually cut away to the Vandenreich headquarters. We cut away to the Silburn. And the Vandenreich are actually really advanced in terms of technology. They have basically like a radio room that you would see like during a war. They have like a radio room. They have microphones. They have like communication equipment. So there's a moment right here when Kurhei is talking, and you hear like a beep, but it's a very low, it's like a doot doot. It's like that. And then like Kurhei or Killhei, damn it, I keep switching them back and forth. It's like somebody's probably just like, just pick one of the names. It's like, okay, I'm probably just going to go with Kurhei because that's what I'm used to. Anyway, so there's a scene here where he reaches into his ear and kind of like a telecommunication device, and he's like, I've just received orders from headquarters. I am supposed to take you in now. So in the manga, it actually is shown. Like, we actually see, like, the radio office of the Silburn. We actually see one of the Sternritters sitting there, or one of the not a Sternritter, but like one of the Quincy's there, like operating a microphone, and there's like computer equipment and stuff behind them. So that's something very interesting there. That we kind of just condensed it down to a scene where Killhei just receives his orders. Now I'm going the other way. You know what? I don't even care anymore. Okay. So anyway, at this point, he gets the orders to bring Ichigo in. I have to capture you. So he's like, I'm sure you've heard of this power before. I will now show you Quincy Final State. Let's steal. So he activates it, and he takes off his glove, revealing another glove, which is a Sanrei Shuto glove, and then he activates, boom, his Quincy, he calls it the Let's Steal. That is sort of like an archaic name, and he goes on to explain later on that that's like the beta version of, the Quincy final form is the Let's Steal, the one that Uryu used. The scene when Uryu pulled out his Sanrei glove against Mayuri, and he, like, completely, like, obliterated Konjiki Ashisoki Jizo and, like, blasted a hole straight through Mayuri, that was the Let's Steal. This is purportedly the upgraded true version of the Quincy final form, version 5. This is Quincy Volsterndick. Okay, which I always called it the Voltstandig. So Voltsterndick. Okay, there we go. He says that it's stronger than the Let's Steal, but, like, I'm just saying, like, the Quincy Let's Steal that Uryu pulled out against Mayuri, that thing was, like, arguably stronger than an average Bankai. And granted, Ichigo's Bankai is anything but average, but I'm thinking that, Kyohei's a little bit, he's off the base on this one. I'm going to still say that if it was Uryu's Let's Steal versus this, I'm going to say Uryu's Let's Steal is still stronger. But anyway, so this is the Quincy final form that is utilized by the Sternritter. We're going to see this a lot during the arc. Every Quincy has this. It's kind of an interesting thing, though, because some of the Quincy's, when they go into this form, they only just basically have a pair of wings and a halo. And other Quincy's, like Kyohei here, actually gain a few extra attributes. Like they have, like he sort of has armor. I don't know if you can see it. I can do the, I can try to do the, so like right here, you can kind of see it. There's like an armor over his, his shoulder. He also has, like, shoes. He gets, like, Quincy light shoes. There's also, like, armor over there on his arms. So a lot of times, though, throughout the entire arc, when Quincy's go into this form, they pretty much just have the wings and the halo, and that's it. So some Sternritter's Voltstandigs are a lot more complex and a lot more detailed than others. So I guess we'll find out that as we go. All right, so... yeah, they begin their fight. We cut back over to Yuha, who states that, okay, well, one of his minions are like, Kyohei Opie is engaged in battle. So he's like, then let's go. Let's go. All Sternritter are to immediately get equipped and head to the Gate of the Sun. It's time to invade the Soul Society. So Yuha is being very pragmatic here. He's just like, hey, listen, Ichigo, one of the 5 war potentials, arguably the strongest of the war potentials, is now being detained by Kyohei over in Huecamundo in another dimension. So let's do this now. Like, if we're going to invade Soul Society, this is the time to do it right now. Okay. And then we get the buffer for the episode, which is actually a little earlier on in the episode. It's not like the halfway point. It's only like a third of the way through the episode they get this. We have Quincy, and then we learn about the Quincy's, and that's great. So I'm going to keep going with this scene, and then I'm going to move on to what they kind of skipped over, because it was something that there was a scene at this point that already happened in the manga that they cut out, but we'll wait until the end of this battle here, or at least they cut away from the battle. So we also see that his eyes have changed. His pupils kind of disappeared. He just has lines in his eyes. That's something else that only kind of he has. Other Quincy's, their eyes don't change like that when they go into their Voltsterndick. Ichigo is kind of wondering, like, okay, is this the same ability? There's a little bit more detail in the manga where Ichigo kind of remembers Uehara telling him about it. The way that Uehara actually phrased it was he basically sat Ichigo down and said to him, like, hey, listen, you should probably know about this. It might actually come in handy someday. It's almost like Uehara sort of predicted this, which later on in the episode, we're going to find out that Mayuri actually predicted that the Quincy's would return someday and attack in a full-on battle, like a war. And so if Mayuri could come up to that conclusion, Yeah, Urahara probably could come to that conclusion as well. So he sat Ichigo down and he's like, listen, you should probably know about this. The Quincy ability that Uryu used that made him lose his powers was called Quincy Let's Steal. So Urahara explained it to Ichigo, but Ichigo's kind of wondering, like, is this the same ability as that? And Kurhei mentions that, like, I'll let you know right now, this is something entirely different. Now, he goes on to say that the Quincy Let's Steal is a relic of the past, used by Soken Ishida, and then he's like Soken Ishida was like a traditionalist, so he was like, you know, stuck in the past, and he was like, this is the Quincy technique that we should use. Meanwhile, the Sternritter and the Vandenreich kind of improved. They improved their technology, they improved their abilities, their techniques, and they managed to arrive at the Volsterndick, which is like a better version of the Let's Steal, which doesn't make you burn out your Quincy powers after you use it. But I think for that reason, it is in general weaker, because the whole point of the Let's Steal is that it like gives you all the Quincy power ever, it gives you complete dominance over Reishi, and then it burns you out, and then you can't use your Quincy powers. You literally cannot access them anymore. There is a way to get them back, but it's not easy, which is what happened with Uryu and Ryuken, like Ryuken training Uryu to get his powers back. So I would say overall, in terms of just sheer power, the Let's Steal is stronger, but the Volsterndick would probably be, in terms of like every other aspect, like the ability to actually use it whenever, and the fact that it doesn't burn out your Quincy powers, and like other like aspects like agility. Well, not even agility, because Uryu was also very, very fast. He was way faster when he went into his Let's Steal, so not even that, but like just the ability to use it longer and not having it burn out your powers, that's pretty useful, I would say. So they're fighting here. You know, Killhei's kind of going on a little bit of a monologue about how powerful he is and everything, and about the Quincy's and Soken, and like 200 years ago this power was, you know, made obsolete. And then Ichigo's just kind of like, I don't know anything about your history or your lore, you know, write an expanded universe novel, bro. Like, if you want to know, if you want me to read about it, fine, but like, I don't really know much about your history, sorry. And so Ichigo just uses a Getsuga, and then bam, he uses a Shikai Getsuga. He uses the backswing too. Like, Ichigo, like, he has like the momentum. He puts his back into this, and then bam, it just hits Kurhei right dead center in the neck. He doesn't even move. He doesn't even like, you know, oh, I got knocked back. No, it's just like bam, he just takes it. Like, ugh, got another one in you. So this is the ability of the Quincy's called Blut Vina, which allows Quincy's to basically, it's like their defensive buff ability. And this is probably going to be explained a little bit more in the next few episodes. But yeah, it's basically when they activate it, it's like that increases their defense. And then there's another one called Blut Artery, which increases offense. Blut Artery, and they can only use one or the other. They can't use both at the same time. That's kind of the point. And Blut Artery, though, I think was only used one time throughout the entire arc in the manga. Like, actually named, it was used only once. Blut Vina is used a lot more. Like, the defensive aspect was used a lot. But the attack, the offensive one, you could argue maybe the Quincy's always had Blut Artery turned on, so they never mentioned it. But, like, I think in terms of a name, it was only dropped, like, one time. So, yeah, Kurhei's basically really tough and strong right now, and he's, like, enhanced strength. Yeah. And so, yeah, there was another line where Ichigo called his Volsterndick, like, it's a creepy ability. If Uryu ever turned into that thing, I would, like, have to, like, you know, just attack him just because of how creepy he looked. And then Kurhei goes on this whole other monologue where he's like, oh, yes, of course, well, the ability that all Quincy's have, you know, that is terrifying to the Shinigami, our mortal enemies. It should be creepy and horrifying. Oh, God, this dude is weird. Okay, so he activates an ability that allows him to absorb all the reishi around him. So you see the Santen or the Soten Kishun, the ability of Orihime. She's also healing the Arankars, like mentally over here and everything. Chad's also here, Nell's here, and the ability is actually being ripped away. Also, it's weird that did Nell, like, lose consciousness at one point? Because, like, Nell was fine, and, oh, maybe she got knocked out during the explosion, back when the Quincy's, like, attacked Ichigo, and she got knocked out, and Ichigo saved her, but then maybe she got knocked unconscious, so she threw her over to Nell over to Orihime. So anyway, yeah, his ability, though, is to basically drain away all of the reishi in the area, since all of Huecamundo is made out of reishi. Every spiritual body in Huecamundo, even Orihime and Chad right now, are made of reishi. It can absorb that, so that's like the true dominance, and that's the power of the Let's Steal we saw being utilized by Uryu back at the Soul Society arc. He was able to literally turn the buildings of the Seirete into a quiver to use as a weapon, you know what I mean? So it's the same deal here. It's just Killhei is just a little bit more refined at it. This is the power of Piskiel. So Piskiel, each of the Voltsterndics have their own individual names, and they're named after like something of God, okay? Because there's like a lot of holy references and God references and like Jesus metaphors with the Quincy's. Yuha himself is kind of Yuha's name in and of itself is taken from the Jewish term for the name of God, YHWH, like removing the vowels. And so it's Yuha. So even that alone is sort of taken from like Judeo-Christian kind of teachings, or maybe just Jewish teachings. Anyway, so Piskiel means justice of God. So all the other Quincy's kind of have the names, and we don't get to hear the names of all of them, but like we know Robert Acutron's is called Walk of God, and Asnotes is called, I think, like the Fear of God. Askins is like God's poison taster. Like, so God is in the name of all of them. That's like the running theme of it. And because Kurhei has the power of the jail, his ability is the justice of God. That's the name of his Voltsterndic. So there you go. Then, as this is a great shot, and I love this. It's even funnier here in the anime, but it was funny enough in the manga where he's like so much on his high horse here, and he's like, "Behold the power of Piskiel, the Quincy final form!" And he's like absorbing all of the reishi to use as like a giant attack on Ichigo, and then out of nowhere, just boom! Here comes the giant fist. You know, giant fist just breaks the reishi that he gathered, shatters it into a million pieces, and then boom! Punches Killay right in the damn jaw. Just boom! It's time to wrestle! Dun, 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 dun. And then boom, we have the headliner, ladies and gentlemen. We have Ion. Okay, Ion has arrived. So, Ion is a chimera creature that is created when the Thrace Bestia, when Apache, Sung Sung, and Mila Rose rip off their left arms, and then they all merge together and make this thing. How does that make sense? I don't know, but it does. Also, I should probably bring up that at this point, we have Mila Rose here looking awesome. You assumed we couldn't fight anymore. So, actually, some people in the last episode were like, I thought the Thrace Bestia died. I thought Yamamoto killed them during the fake Karakura Town arc, and I forgot to bring that up because you know, I always knew they were going to be still alive because I read the manga. But anyway, no, so it was revealed later, I think in like an extra piece of information or something. It was revealed after the fight. They didn't die. Yamamoto even stated, like, I'm just going to let you off with a light charring. So Yamamoto straight up killed Ion. He like sliced Ion in half, but Ion can be created as long as they rip off their arms and like, you know, offer them as like, you know, like a ritual tribute or whatever, and you can summon Ion. So after the battle, basically Yamamoto just burns each of them and they get knocked out of the fight, but then Orihime basically heals everybody. That's like the implication. Like, Orihime arrived on the battlefield afterwards and she healed, you know, the Thrace Bestia. There was also, actually, there was a statement that Soifone, because Soifone lost an arm to Baragon, remember, and I don't think Orihime actually healed her. I think that was stated that the technology of the Seirete had just improved enough that they could repair Soifone's arm without Orihime. Or maybe Orihime did help with Soifone, I'm not really sure. But anyway, that's how the Thrace Bestia got their arms back, because they literally have to rip off their arms in order to summon Ion. So normally, if Ion gets killed, that's pretty much it. It's like a one-and-done kind of thing. But because Orihime has the Hack's ability to like reverse fate or whatever, she basically used it to bring. She's like Louis LeClock from One Piece D&D kind of, and so just turns back to clock essentially and gives their arms back. In the original anime, the Thrace Bestia, the way that they summon Ion is toned down because of the censorship, so they don't actually physically rip off their arms. Basically, their arms just kind of glow red, and then they shoot laser beams together, so like 3 laser beams like coalesce in one point, and it makes like this weird cloud, and then Ion appears out of the cloud. And then throughout the entire fight, like, instead of seeing their like bleeding like stumps of their arms, there's just like a red aura like coming off of their arms. So here it's way more obvious, where you actually do see Apache and like her ripped off arm and it's like bleeding and everything like that. By the way, something I forgot to bring up, but Apache has heterochromia. She has her two eyes are different colors. Something that I forgot about, but I'm glad the anime remembered, so that's cool. So Ion's here. Also, by the way, I should mention at this point that the last episode of BANKAST on YouTube actually got age restricted. It got age restricted, and I don't know the reason why. I assume the reason, I'm pretty certain the reason why it got age restricted because in the last episode there was a lot of blood and gore and violence. Like there was literally a field of just like dead hollows, like just hacked up, like in the middle of the sands of Huecamundo. So there was a lot of gore in the last one. So that might have been the reason why it got age restricted. I'm hoping it doesn't happen with this one. It also got limited monetization because I guess I swore a little bit too much in that episode. So I'll dial that back in the future episodes of these. But I'm thinking it was the violence, so I'm gonna cut around a lot of the worst of the violence in this episode for that reason. Yeah. Or I also think it might have been because of Haribel's outfit, because Haribel's outfit was a little revealing. But if that's the case, if Haribel's outfit was the reason it got age restricted, then we're gonna have a problem when we get to Orihime's outfit later in this arc. Let me tell you something. It's still a while away yet, but Orihime's outfit, it might be problematic later on. We'll see. We'll handle that when we cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, so Ion is basically this giant chimera Hulk creature. Like, calling him the Hulk might actually not be inaccurate because he's like the original Hulk where he doesn't really have a lot of, like, intelligence. He just kind of beats down whatever he sees. There is an added scene in the manga where they actually, okay, so it's stated that Ion doesn't really take orders. Sung Sung kind of says that, like, we've never really heard it. Like, it never really follows our orders. Like, it usually attacks our enemies for us, but it never really seems like it listens to what we're saying. They don't even know if it has ears, really. But in this scene in the manga, it actually is kind of established that Ion sort of cares for the well-being of the people that created it. So Ion kind of looks over at Apache, Sung Sung, and Mila Rose, kind of looks a little bit concerned that they were defeated, that they were so injured by Killhei. And Apache kind of looks over at Ion and is just like, don't worry about us, Ion, go and fight. And so Ion is just kind of like this mindless monster, but sort of does have some concern for the Tres Bestia, which is cut out of the anime, which is unfortunate. Anyway, back to it. So Ion just charges right in and just attacks. And so this is Ion's actual face. So you'd think that the little skull there, like the deer skull, is its actual face. No, that's like its nose. And you see the eyes and the mouth appear under it. And I love Ichigo's reaction here. Ichigo is like looking at this thing and he's just like, what is this monster? Because Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, they've never seen this thing before. This thing just shows up out of nowhere and starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Killhei. So it's like, okay, sure. And Killhei's there and he's just like, a monster like you could never beat my won't stand. Oh, crap! And then just gets punched in the face. I love that because he's just like, I am a higher class. I have the power of the Quincy Holy Form. You can't possibly hope to defeat me, you mindless brute. Oh, what have you? And he just gets punched in the face. It's like a wrestling match. It's just like, yeah! You know, just like, I love it. Ion is so much fun. Okay, so, all right. Now we're getting into a new scene. Okay, so in the manga, the one scene that got cut out of this episode altogether was a scene with the lieutenants, with the vice captains, okay? So it's a scene that takes place immediately after the captain meeting. We cut over to the lieutenants meeting. This is actually the first scene of chapter 489, where, like, Renji, Rukia, Izuru, they're all there basically waiting for the captains to get done with their meeting, and Izuru kind of heads up this gathering, and he kind of says that, like, he brings up the whole thing about the Rukongai citizens going missing, and this was something that was mentioned in the first episode by Ikaku and Yumichika. They go to investigate the Rukongai, and they notice that, you know, the citizens are just like, there's these mass disappearances of everybody in the Rukongai. So Izuru kind of brings up that, like, everything is connected here, like, the invasion by a rebel army, the mass disappearances of Hollows, and the disappearances of the Rukongai. They're all connected to one thing. Like, they're all the same thing. And so this is not really such a really important moment in the manga. Basically, it's them just realizing that it was probably the Soul Reapers that actually exterminated or wiped out the Rukongai citizens. You know, and Izuru immediately basically accuses Mayuri of this. And so it is kind of interesting because we do get to see Nemu here. For the first time. We get to see most of the lieutenants after the time skip here. We saw some of them already in the Fullbringer arc. We saw Renji, we saw Rukia, we saw Yachiru during the Fullbringer arc. We see Rangiku, we see Iba, we see Momo, we see Izuru, we see Shuhei. Most of their designs, though, haven't really changed since before, so it's not that big of a deal. So the meeting basically ends, though, the scene ends with Izuru basically basically looking over at Nemu and is just like, Nemu, what do you think about this? Do you think Mayuri had anything to do with the disappearances of the Rukongai? And Nemu basically just looks over and just like, I don't know. Master Mayuri never told me anything about it. And then Izuru's like, I'm gonna report this to the captain commander. I'm gonna report this. Izuru's a little tattletale. And then Nemu's like, do as you please. There is no way Master Mayuri would do anything wrong. So that scene is completely cut out, and it's not really that big of a deal because, like, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't care about the Rukongai citizen disappearance, like subplot. Like, that was something that was, like I said, I think Kubo might have been trying to do a little bit of, like, a mystery at the beginning of this arc to, like, ooh, citizens are disappearing in the Rukongai. Ooh, these mysterious rebel army is appearing. Ooh, I wonder if it's all connected, huh? But honestly, like, who cares? Who cares about, like peasants disappearing in the Rukongai district? I mean, that sucks, but I'm like, when it comes to the Quincy's returning and all this stuff with Uryu that you could be focusing on, I don't care about some disappearances in the Rukongai district. I really don't care. And so I'm not really upset about any of that, though, being cut out, because in lieu of that, we actually have this extra scene involving character development and story development for Uryu and Ryuken. So let's all clap for that. If I had a difference, like, the lieutenants meeting to talk about disappearances in the Rukongai versus Uryu, who's the Quincy, learning about what's going on, yeah, I'll take that any day of the week. So this is a new scene that was added into the anime. This is not in the manga at all. So this is the Ishido residence in the archives. So Uryu and Ryuken, they basically live in a mansion. It's shown later during the flashback that Soken and his wife lived in a really nice mansion. Like, the Ishida family's very well off. And then obviously Ryuken would have gotten it after they passed away. So yeah, Uryu's pretty rich. He's living in a pretty rich house. And also Ryuken is the head of the he's the head doctor at Karakura Hospital. So I think the training area where Ryuken helped Uryu get his powers back in the Arrancar arc, I think that was under the hospital. But they also do live in a nice mansion. So the fact that Uryu has, like, a huge, like, they have a library, that's actually not, like, unheard of. That makes a little bit more sense knowing the context here. So Uryu, like, he figured this out pretty early on that, like, wait a second, the way Eburn was dressed and the kind of abilities that he used and everything, like, yeah, and then hollows are being exterminated in Hueco Mundo. Uryu's, like, the most intelligent member of Ichigo's friends. It would probably take him less than 5 seconds to realize and put the puzzle pieces together. It's probably Quincy's, you know what I mean? Which is a problem because, like, we're the only Quincy's that should be alive. Like, I was assuming that after Soken died, me and you, Ryuken, father and son, were the only Quincy's left in existence. So the fact that Quincy's are not only, there's more Quincy's, not only that, but the fact that there are more Quincy's and that there is an army of Quincy's that is mobilized and attacking the Soul Society. What the hell, Dad? Like, what's going on with this, right? And Ryuken, in typical Ryuken fashion, is just like, fixes his glasses and is just like, this has nothing to do with you, son. And it's just like, of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't at all. So, I really love this scene here because, like, I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that, like, after that scene when Ichigo decides to go to Hueco Mundo and help Nell and Pesce rescue Don Chaka, Uryu decides to stay behind in the world of the living because he can't go help Hollows because he's a Quincy. I think that is the last time we see Uryu in the manga for, like, 50 chapters until, like, chapter 540, when it's revealed he's a member of the Stern Ritter, which that's not even a spoiler because that's in the damn opening titles, you know what I mean? So we go, like, 50 chapters with Uryu and Ryuken not even being, like, referenced. Well, Ryuken gets referenced, but in a flashback, okay? And then it's like after the flashback is over and Ichigo gets his new Zanpakuto, something else that was in the intro, we then cut over to the Quincy Palace, the Stillburn, and then boom, Uryu's a Stern Ritter now, like, working for U-Haul. Like, no setup, no connecting the dots. Like, how did Uryu go from being in the world of the living to working for the Stern Ritter? Like, how did this happen? So hopefully we'll connect the dots a little bit more here. So Uryu's like, hey, we're supposed to be the last Quincy's, like, in existence. How come, like, there's more? And Ryuken's like, this doesn't this doesn't concern you. I'm not going to tell you. Uryu is very frustrated by this. Ryuken always does this. Ryuken never just tells, like, I love Ryuken's character. He looks really cool. He has cool abilities, but, like, he is not a good dad. He's actually very unhelpful. Like, just tell Uryu, like, yeah, there's this army that's attacking, and it's probably going to involve us in some way, which it does. So, like, screw you, Ryuken, but whatever. Anyway, Uryu has a cool moment here where he's like, hey, Dad, I am the last Quincy, which that is an important thing to mention because Ryuken used to call himself the proper last Quincy. The idea is that we were led to believe early on in the story, we were led to believe during the Soul Society arc that Soken Ishida gave the powers of him, like the last Quincy, to Uryu. He passed them to Uryu, his grandson, because Ryuken didn't want them. Ryuken didn't want anything to do with Quincy's. He went off to be a doctor. So the implication was that Soken skipped over Ryuken and gave his powers to Uryu. However, it was revealed during the Arrancar arc that was actually not true. Soken actually did give his powers to Ryuken. So Ryuken pulls out Soken's medallion and says, I am the last Quincy. I am the true bearer of the powers of Soken Ishida. He gave them to me, not to you, which means that Soken still believed in his son, even though Ryuken wanted nothing to do with Quincy's and he didn't like the lifestyle. Soken still believed in Ryuken and gave his powers to him rather than Uryu, who did want to be a Quincy, okay? So the fact that Ryuken called himself the last Quincy back in the Arrancar arc, and now Uryu is the one that, like, no, Dad, I am the last Quincy, okay? That is a big deal. That's a little bit of, like, Uryu kind of standing up to his dad a little bit there. I really like that scene. Anyway, Ryuken kind of takes it a little bit as a compliment, I guess, because he's like, he gives him a hint. He doesn't just tell him, like, go into my office and read the journal in my right top drawer or whatever. He just says, the answer you seek cannot be found here. Ooh, thanks, Dad. Thanks for all of the help. Anyway, we now cut over to the Shoryu Gate. Now, there are 4 gates that are shown throughout all of the Seirete. The only one that we get to see during the first anime is, well, okay, actually, this is a little bit of a fun fact that probably most people do not know. How many of the gate guardians do we get to see during the first anime of Bleach? And that includes, by the way, all of the first Bleach anime, because many of you would probably just say 1. We got to see Jidanbo. Jidanbo Ikanzaka shows up at the beginning of the Soul Society arc when Ichigo and the rest, like, Ichigo has to fight him to get into the Seirete, and then Gin shows up and, like, stabs them. So there's actually 4 gates to gain access to the Seirete, like the normal ways to gain access. There's 4 of them. There's a north, south, east, and west, and they all have a different name. There's the north Black Mountain Gate, and then there's the south Red Hollow Gate. Then there's the East Blue Stream Gate, which is what this one is right now, the Shoryu Gate. This is the Eastern Gate. And then there's Jidanbo's Gate, which was the Western Gate, the West White Road Gate. Because remember when they arrived there was like a white path that they were running on? That's what it means, okay? So there's 4 Gate Guardians in the manga. We only get to see we only get to see 2 of them in the anime. We get to see Jidanbo, and then later we see Danzomaru, who is the guardian of the Black Ridge Gate, who shows up during the Bount arc only. So that's a little bit of a trivia fact for you. If you got that, good job. The other Guardians, by the way, in the manga, they show up. They were actually brainwashed by Aizen, by Kyoka Suigetsu, to work for him. So remember that scene when Kukaku and Jidanbo show up at Sokyoku Hill at the end of the Soul Society arc, and they, like, fight against Aizen? Aizen also summons the other 3 Guardians to help fight Jidanbo there. So we have Danzomaru, and then Kaiwan. Kaiwan is supposed to be the guardian of the East Gate, which is this one right here, the Shoryu Gate, the Eastern Gate. So he's not here, so I don't know. Maybe he died or something. I don't know. And then there was Jidanbo with the West Gate, and then Hyogen Yudo, I think, was the guardian of the Red Hollow Gate to the south. So yeah, it's like the 4 guardians, they don't show up. Jidanbo doesn't even show up in this arc, so yeah, it doesn't really matter. So I guess the gates are just left, like, these giants that protect the Soul Society, I guess they're just off on vacation while this war is going on. Anyway, this is the Shoryu Gate, and we see Ryunosuke Yuki, and we see Shino Madarame once again. In the manga, I think this is the last time they really show up. They might show up a little bit in the battle, but I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more of them in the actual war when it starts in this arc here. So this is the moment where Kubo just kind of explains to the audience, like, why do Quincy's and Shinigami hate each other? Like, why are we fighting? And Shino doesn't actually know, but this guy knows. So this is, hi, Aizen, how are you doing? This is Squad 13th, 6th seat, Hidetomo Kajomaru. His parents are sculptors for a living. How do I know that? Because Kubo revealed it in a little bit of a pre-chapter, like, buffer thing. Anyway, so, yeah, he looks a lot like Aizen. There's a lot of references and jokes to that I've been seeing on social media as of late. I guess Kubo just really likes that design. He's like, you know what? I just want to draw a nice Aizen again, drawing the hair and the glasses back when Aizen was a cool dude. I just miss that design. There's also a character in the Shusuke Amagai arc that looks a lot like him as well. Just like Kubo really likes, I think, that design in general. The glasses, I don't know. He has some cool jewelry and everything. Anyway, he's the 13th Division 6th seat. Remember, Yuki and Shino are in the 13th division, so they're in the same division as Rukia and Ukitake is their captain. So anyway, he basically shows up basically just for plot explanation. He explains the whole concept of Quincy's and Shinigami, and I'm not going to go all the way into it. I think we understand at this point how it works, but basically, the Soul Society in the world of living, there's souls that, like, there's no, like Soul Society is not like heaven. It's not like the souls go there and they stay there forever. There's a whole reincarnation thing in Bleach, where the souls go to the Soul Society, and then they go back to the world of living, and they get reincarnated over and over and over again. There needs to be an equal balance of souls, and he even brings this up, like, that's the reason why Shinigami were originally called balancers back in the day, because when a Shinigami kills a hollow, their soul gets reincarnated back in the Soul Society, and then it continues the cycle. When a Quincy kills a hollow, however, it completely obliterates the hollows, so they do not have any chance to reincarnate, which means the balance gets thrown off, and the way that Hajomaru explains it is if the balance is thrown off, then boom, the two realms will merge together, destroying both of them. So the Soul Society and the living world will be smashed into each other, and like two galaxies melding with one another, it, like, destroy it. And so that's the reason why we have to fight them now, because he also goes on to explain there wasn't, like, well, we actually cut back to Uryu really briefly here, but he goes on to explain that there was a dialogue with the Quincy's for a long time, trying to figure out, like, a way to peacefully arrive at, like, a conclusion, but they just turned away every single, like, envoy from the Shinigami. Not really sure how accurate that is historically, if that's actually what happened, or if that's just the way the Shinigami tell the story. I was like, we tried to help them, but they kept turning us away. And then eventually they had to, they wiped out all the Quincy's, which happened about 200 years ago, and that's where the remnants survived, the Sternritter, the Vandenreich, and that's why we're fighting them now. We cut back to Uryu, who's still in the library, and he even mentions, like, there isn't much written about Quincy's to begin with, but he looks down at his Quincy pentacle, and he remembers his master. He remembers Soken, which is, once again, a reference to Soken. Good. I think can we please see a flashback with Soken in this arc, please? God. Anyway, Uryu basically is like, wait a second, my dad told me the answer's not here, so it has to be somewhere else in the house. So he goes into his dad's office, and by the way, I love the little titles that they give in each different location. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I think it looks cool. Anyway, so Uryu goes into his dad's office, and he looks inside of his desk drawer, and he sees an old beat-up journal with the Vandenreich's cross on it. And so he looks through this journal, and he realizes this is my grandfather's. This is Soken Ishida's journal. And so he reads it as Hajomaru is beginning the explanation, continuing the explanation of, like, hey, you know, if this was, if one of the sides was just, then it would be called self-defense or conquest. Like, the idea is, like, if you are being attacked by an enemy with no justification, then you would say, hey, we're fighting back in self-defense. And if, I guess, they had justification to invade, they would be calling it conquest. But it's called war. And the reason it's called war is because both sides are just. So we cut back over to the Captain Commander's offices that are all burned to pieces because of his attack. We see Mayuri here. This basically serves as the wrap-up to the little subplot of the Rukongai citizens. Mayuri brings up, well, you know what, I didn't even bother loading it as a Q point because I really don't care. But essentially, yeah, Mayuri's the one that went and wiped out 28,000 members of the Rukongai, the peasants that live in those Rukon districts, like above, like, district, like, 60. And the reason he did that was because if he didn't do that, then the balance of souls would be off, and then the worlds would collapse. So they had to do that in order to maintain the balance of their worlds. Yamamoto Yamamoto kind of blames Mayuri. He's like, if you would have just went through the proper channels, we would have given you proper, like, permission to do that. But Mayuri went and did it anyway. And Yamamoto actually kind of blames Mayuri. He's like, if only the Squad 12 research and development would have realized this happening, would have predicted this, we wouldn't have been in this situation right now. Basically, Yamamoto he's guilt-stricken. He's upset over the death of Chojuro, his best friend and his loyal comrade, and he's trying to, like, shift the blame anywhere he can. He's like, if Squad 12 would have known about the Quincy's earlier, then we wouldn't have had this problem and Chojuro wouldn't have had to die, basically. And Mayuri, this is the head captain, mind you, but Mayuri, he will not hold his tongue here. He straight up tells him, no, you are wrong on this, head captain. It is your fault this is happening. The moment that Uryu Ishida showed up and invaded the Soul Society years ago, when Ichigo, Uryu, Chad, and Orihime broke into the Soul Society to rescue Rukia, the second that I fought against Uryu and I realized that there was a Quincy that was still alive and he had this access to this crazy power of the Let's Steal, I told you this might happen, because Mayuri's not an idiot. Mayuri was completely dominated by Uryu in that fight. He was almost killed by Uryu's Let's Steal. So Mayuri, of course, he went to the head captain and he said, listen, Yamamoto, Quincy's are still alive. There's only one Quincy that's apparently still alive, but if there's one that's still alive, that means there could be a lot more that are still alive. So I imagine Mayuri went through this whole thing where he's like, Yamamoto, I'm telling you, if Uryu is still alive, there might be a whole army of Quincy's that are still alive. And if they have all the same powers that Uryu did, they all have Let's Steal, that is a serious concern. We need to worry about that in the future, okay? Because they're going to want to freaking murder us for what we did to them, okay? They have a huge vendetta. Mayuri was predicting the future here. I think Urahara did as well, which is the reason he told Ichigo about the Let's Steal. But yeah, so Mayuri was like, no, head captain, this is your fault. You are the one who chose to needlessly disregard my words, you, head captain, all right? And you see Yamamoto there where he realizes, like, oh crap, yeah, you are right. You are the one that told me all about this, and I chose to not act. I chose not to do anything, and my inaction directly resulted in the death of my best friend. So yeah, Yamamoto's definitely feeling the guilt a little bit. Also, Mayuri goes on to say, it is your fault because you could not kill that man 1,000 years ago, setting up the backstory for Yamamoto and Yuha and their battle that they had way back in the day. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Obviously, that's not something that's going to be addressed right now. But yeah, that's something that I definitely want to see more of. So now, cutting back to the Huecamundo part of things, we have a moment where Ion is just beating the ever-loving crap out of Killhei. He's just pounding him over and in the ground like, and it's so, we cut over to see Orihime there, and she just has her like, oh my god, this is horrible, jeez, this is just blatant, like, this is just overkill, this is just gratuitous at this point, you know what I mean? I like to think that Ion has just been playing with Killhei like a ragdoll, just pounding him into the sand for like an uncomfortable amount of time. Like, it's not even like he punches him once or twice and then the fight's over and Killhei's on the ground, like, not moving. No, this has been going on for like 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes of uninterrupted just Ion just, boom, bam, bam, just smashing Killhei into the ground to the point where even like Orihime and Chad and Ichigo, who are like, Killhei is this horrible person that like led this army that like annihilated the Hollows, you know, and just like invading Huecamundo and burning it to the ground. He's a horrible guy, but even they're kind of like, okay, this is just overkill. Jeez, this is getting uncomfortable even for us, and this was the enemy. So anyway, Ion just pounds him into the ground a bunch of times. It's like a Daffy Duck character. It's just like, oh, of course you know this means war. He just gets pounded into the dirt like, why? Ow. And so Apache is fairly confident that he's dead. She's just like, oh, wow, yeah, he's still in one piece after taking that beating from Ion, whatever. So Killhei stabs her and knocks her down, and he gets up. And I couldn't show this one scene because I was like, might be a little bit too violent for YouTube. But there's a scene where, yeah, Killhei's neck is like bent at like a 90-degree angle, and he mentions that the Blut Vena needs to be strengthened because he dealt with this, like, basically just got thrashed by the Incredible Hulk. So he's just like, I need to fix that. So he basically just takes his neck and just, like, cracks it back into place. And he's like, but before I do that, I need to eliminate you. So this is a scene that is actually cut from the manga. This is a scene that is a small scene, but I kind of wish they would have included. So there's a scene here where Orihime's Soten Kishun, once again, he activates an ability. It's called Sclavre. Sclavre is basically the Quincy ability, to the ultimate ability to absorb all Reishi around you. It's not just absorption of Reishi, it's Reishi dominance, basically. And so he's basically like god of Reishi, and he absorbs all of it. He absorbs it from those quartz trees that are littered around Huecamundo. He absorbs it from everything. And he says, perhaps I say you will live. And so he absorbs Ion here. Hope that wasn't too gruesome. But anyway, there's a scene, though, where... Okay, so Apache gets stabbed. Mila Rose grabs her, and they try to run away. In the anime, Kurhei just shoots 2 arrows at them. Or no, he doesn't shoot arrows. He just uses the Sclavre, and they get dropped, okay? In the manga, there's a scene where Mila Rose and Sung Sung actually run over to Orihime and Chad, and then Sung Sung uses an ability called Miuda, which is Snake Shedding Fortress, because her ability, her Resurrection is Anaconda, which it's like Anaconda. It's like she's a snake, okay? So her ability is she literally sheds her skin, and her shed skin turns into like a dome that then becomes camouflaged, and she also uses her Ryatsu in order to block off any Ryatsu sensing abilities. So it's basically a fortress where you can't see it visually, like it's like obfuscates you. You can't like see it with your eyes, but also you can't sense it with Reishi sensing. So it's like the ultimate, like, kind of like safe room sort of thing. However, it doesn't really matter because Kurhei can just absorb Reishi. So it's like he doesn't need to see where Sung Sung is. He doesn't need to, sense them with Reishi. He can just absorb all Reishi around them. So the dome literally gets ripped apart. Now, I like that scene because Mila Rose has a moment where she actually talks to Orihime, and Mila Rose actually recognizes Orihime. He's like, oh, you were the princessa that Aizen brought back. Why are you back here, okay? Anyway, I don't want you to think that we're allies or anything. It's just that you have really powerful soul power as well, like Ryatsu, and that guy can absorb Ryatsu. I don't want you guys to get absorbed and make him even stronger than he already is. That's kind of the premise. So that's all cut out of the episode, unfortunately. And Mila Rose and Sung Sung just both get dropped by Killhei here. Ion gets absorbed, and his powers get absorbed into the Volt Standic, basically turning him into part Ion. So he gets Ion's muscles, he gets the eyes, he gets his mouth, and then, right there, Sung Sung and Mila Rose, they both get dropped. There's Chad trying to protect Orihime, but his his arm is also getting ripped apart because they're all made out of Reishi at this point. He mentions that he doesn't like using this power, though, because it, like, merges him with other beings that he finds, like, lower than him. So he's like, I don't like to be my holy wings to be tainted by such wicked beings, So he doesn't like using it, but it is a very powerful ability that absorbs all this Reishi around him. And then at that point, we have Uehara and Pesce. We kind of cut over to them. They rescue Dondo Chaka. It's not really that big of a deal. Dondo Chaka was just hiding in the sand, basically pretending to be a statue. And then Pesce just, like, digs him out, and then Uehara is carrying him away. So they're kind of having a little bit of comic relief. But then Uehara looks back over, and he senses what's going on with Killhei using his Sclavre ability. So he's like, okay, I need to go see what's going on with that. So, yeah, it's just the scene that was cut out of the manga. Wish it was there, but it isn't. So, what are you going to do? Anyway, now we cut back over to the Soul Society where Yuha arrives floating over it, and now it's time to get this invasion underway. Or is it? Because now we cut back over to Ryukin really quick. Okay, we'll get to the invasion in a second. So, the journal that's inside of Ryukin's office does talk about the Vandenreich. It talks about the Sternritter. It pretty much explains everything. Like, the plot of this manga is basically in that book. So I want Uryu and Ryukin to have an explanation, like, talk about this. Like, you know everything. You know about the Vandenreich. You know about His Majesty. And you even know about Mom. So that is foreshadowing, ladies and gentlemen. Honest to God, foreshadowing. Holy crap. Oh my God. Sweet armless Soul King. That is freaking amazing. Okay, so we actually have setup for Kane Katagiri, who's later going to be revealed to be Uryu's mom. We're going to find out more about her in a flashback with Masaki and everything, but, like, good, you're establishing it now. Also, side note, did you know the first appearance of Uryu's mom was actually in the Bount arc? It's crazy. I actually want to do another breakdown analysis of the Bount arc because there's so much crap in there that's actually hinted at later on. Like Kubo, like, oh, I'm going to draw Uryu's mother, and Uryu's mother was depicted in the Bount arc as a woman with black hair that cried a lot. Guess what? That's Kane Katagiri's character. Anyway, so, yeah, Uryu is finally confronting his dad about all this. Like, hey, you know about Mom. You know about what's happening with the Vandenreich and what happened with grandfather. Like, explain this. And Ryukin, by the way, I don't have the cue point, but Ryukin was basically just like, I told you it doesn't concern you. And that's it. He just like dodges the conversation. But no, at this point, I want Uryu to like grab his dad's shoulder and be like, no, Dad, come on. This is bullcrap. You need to tell me what's going on here, okay? Was Dad a member of, I can't say their name, was Dad a member of, and it's just like, oh, I guess, okay, all right, son, here you go, here's the story, come on, Uryu needs to hear this story, all right? It also might be Ryukin's reluctance to tell Uryu about them that makes Uryu go to, I was like, okay, if you won't tell me about them, I'm gonna go find this Majesty and talk to him. That might actually be the reason, that might be the impetus for why Uryu goes to visit the Vandenreich. Guess we'll see. Anyway, we come back over to the Soul Society where the invasion now is being underway. So there's this nice little moment where Hajomaru is just like, don't worry, guys. Squad 11 is stationed behind the gate, and they won't attack out of nowhere. Boom, they attack out of nowhere. So the Quincy's have the ability to hide in shadows, and they can pretty much pop out wherever shadows exist. So the Seireite's like a Seki barrier doesn't really do anything to them. So he can just basically pop up whenever he wants. And so Yuha here mentions, conflict is such an unpleasant affair. And so he basically raises the entirety of the Soul Society a bash in blue reishi fire. And we even see Rukia there. Oh my god, she's awesome. We see Rukia there, and she's looking up, and she's just like, oh my god, yeah, that's not good. Oh my god, is this the first time we're seeing Rukia? I think it is. I think this is the first time we're seeing Rukia in the anime, because the scene she showed up in earlier was actually cut from the episode. Like I said, the scene with all the lieutenants. So I think this is the first time we're actually seeing Rukia in the 1,000 Year Blood War. I mean, I saw her in the trailers and everything, but like, still, she's so kawaii. Okay, so anyway, now we cut over to the first division. This is Genshiro Okikiba. He's the third seat. So now that Chojiro's dead, he's basically the next in line after Yamamoto. He's basically the right-hand man of Yamamoto. And then we have this crack team of Shinigami. So we have Izuru here. And the third, fifth, and sixth seats of the third division. Hold on, let me pull this up here in the manga. Let me see here. Okay, yeah, we cover a lot of stuff. Well, see, a lot of stuff gets cut and then changed and moved around. So they actually fit like 6 chapters in this episode. There was a lot of stuff that was stuffed in this one. Okay, so we see this is third company, third seat, Riku Togakushi. And he is on the right. And then we have the 5th seat, Takesuna Gori, and he's the dude with the helmet. He's the 5th seat. And then we see the 6th seat, Asuka Katakura, and he's on the left. He's like the guy with the hair and the scarf. So they actually skip over the 4th seat. So Izuru is the lieutenant. He's the 2nd seat, or the vice captain. And then the 3rd seat, 5th seat, and 6th seat. So we actually cut over the 4th seat for whatever reason. Will the 4th seat of the 3rd division be relevant? I don't know. But anyway, they show up, and they are getting ready for battle. That's a much better scene. And then, we see their names here anyway. I didn't even need to look it up in the book. Okay, anyway, so a fire attack just shoots out from the pillar, and I had to also cut it out here because of Izuru. Izuru loses, like, the right half of his body. Like, his arm and a good solid chunk. Like, his torso's basically being held together by, like, this much after this attack. He gets, like, just fireballed right through the chest. And so he drops, and then all of the other Shinigami use their Zanpakutos. They use their Shikais. Oh my god, I forgot their names already. Hold on a second. They don't really, spoiler alert, they don't do much in this arc. Asuka Katakura, his ability is Katakage, which is Summer Shade, his Zanpakuto. So then this guy, this is not Takesuna Gori, that's just because of the way the text was. This is Riku Togakushi, and then his ability is, his Zanpakuto is Spiral and Rise Shunjin, which just means spring dust, and it turns into like a scythe blade. And then we have Moguri Bue, who is Gori's Zanpakuto, and that means whistling winter wind. So we don't really get to see them at all, and then they almost all get immediately one-shotted by this character right here. That is Basby, who is Stern Ritter H, the Heat. He is one of the most main, like, focused on, like, Stern Ritter in the entire army. He has a whole backstory that we're actually eventually going to find out about. He has, like, lug nuts for, like, earrings, and he uses a crossbow, and he has fire powers because he's the Heat. Also, he has a mohawk, which is pretty cool. He's a chicken man. Anyway, so, yeah, that's the wipeout of the 3rd Division. They don't really get focused on all too much. Then we have just a shot of other Stern Ritter as they're all invading. This is Driscoll Birchie, Stern Ritter O, the Overkill. He's actually the one that killed Chojuro. Then we have Askin Nakle Var, who's a little bit obscured here, but he's Stern Ritter D, the Death Dealing. Then we have Robert Akutron, Stern Ritter N. We actually do not know what it stands for, though, because it's one of the 2 letters that was never explained. I hope it is. K and N were the 2 letters that we don't know anything about, so I hope his letter is explained during this arc. Then we have Bambietta Basterbind, who's probably going to have a lot of Rule 34 stuff about her. She's Stern Ritter E, the Explode. And then we have Asnote, who's Stern Ritter F, the Fear. And then we round it all out with Stern Ritter B, the Balance, Drugram Hashwalth, who's the 2nd in command, the right-hand man of Yuha, Tremble in Fear's Soul Reapers. The Stern Ritters. Oh, there's Rangiku. Hi, Rangiku. Hi, Rangiku. Anyway, Drugram Hashwalth is there, and he's just like, we will purge you all. And then that's the end of the episode, right there. Just and this epic music is playing in the background as Drugram is just there, and he's like, do not worry, do not fear, do not feel sadness. We will purge you all. And then that's the end of the episode. We also have this poem, which I believe is a new poem. This was not in Volume 50, so the next poem would be Volume 57, which is a poem that's actually all about Byakuya, because Byakuya is going to be doing some cool stuff up in the next episode, probably. So it's not this one. It's actually a new one. I think I think Kubo added some new poems. Like, he has to in order for it to make sense, because otherwise they're going to run out of poems with how many episodes there are. Anyway, so yeah, that's the end of Bleach Episode 3. Next episode is Bleach Episode 4, Kill the Shadow. And we also, I forgot to mention these, but at the end of every episode, we've been seeing basically artwork from the episode in really high detail. I think drawn by Kubo. So here we go. We have Yamamoto and Yuha like on opposite ends of each other. So yeah, that was the episode, Episode 3, March of the StarCross. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, like I said, anything else, any big issues with the podcast or anything, yeah, remember it's on Spotify. I'll leave the link below. It's available on Spotify. You go check that out there. But yeah, thank you for watching, everybody. This was probably the longest one I've done so far, but it's going to start heating up. There was 6 chapters to cover this time, so there was a lot of stuff to go over. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking, signing out.